Unified School District partners. And I'm going to toss it to our district lead, Jamie Lowey, who will be guiding us through this conversation. Jamie, welcome to you and the outstanding team from Oakland Unified School District. We welcome you this morning, and we will now stop sharing so you can share your slide deck and guide us through our conversation this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So we do represent Oakland Unified School District. We proudly represent Oakland Unified School District, all 33,500 students and incredible staff of Oakland Unified School District. Our OUSD team in particular is Ms. Adia Lopez from Frick United Academy of Language, is our family liaison. Ms. Obrera, our principal from Frick United Academy of Language. Ms. Lally is our community school manager from Frick United Academy of Language. Myself, Jerome Gordine, Director of Student Achievement, Targeted Strategies for the Office of Equity. Ms. Fenwick, Samantha, is one of our district family engagement specialists within the Office of Equity. And Ms. Sarah Nuno Vila is our family and community engagement specialist within the Office of Equity. So OUSD at a glance, as I said, 35,000, roughly 35,000 TK through 12 students. Right now we have 81 district-run schools and programs, and 50% of students who speak a non-English home language. Our mission is to build a full-service community school district, focus on high academic achievement while serving the whole child, eliminating inequity, and providing each child with excellent teachers every day. Our vision is that our students will find joy in the academic experience while graduating the skills to ensure they're caring, competent, informed, fully informed critical thinkers who prepare for college, career, and community success, along with our values, which is student first, equity, excellence, integrity, cultural responsiveness, and joy. So as part of our frame of being community schools, being focused on being community schools, the goal is to, as you can see with this queen here, to have thriving students. So our problem of practice in particular is that our families are not physically and or virtually connected to school sites and the district as a whole, as evidenced by attendance at in-person and virtual events. So how's that surface? We're able to engage in the Fishbone Exercise to lift up our problem of practice and discuss possible root causes. So evidence number one, community attendance at informal virtual events that are district-driven. Evidence number two, family attendance and informational and engagement virtual events. And evidence number three, family attendance at student-led conferences in person at site events. So the core cause of ineffective engagement, as you can see, the arrows did not hit the center, did not hit the target. You know, look at the arrows. So system tools are not made to be community friendly just yet. So that's our problem in practice. We feel is our core cause of ineffective engagement. And I will pass it to our family engagement specialist, Ms. Samantha Fenwick.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So just as a quick overview, the problem of practice root causes we have identified are the current pandemic conditions, language access, timing, failure to name the why, and failing to use trusted voices. We'll go a little bit deeper into these in our next few slides.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna just briefly talk about how the current pandemic conditions really push families to not be connected. So we have COVID safety protocols that really limited access to the site. We are using our buzz and door system to limit access to the site for COVID safety. That feels very disconnected. We are talking literally through a device. You're talking to a box and just hearing a voice. It's very not welcoming to families, but we are doing so to keep families and the site safe. these COVID protocols are also ever changing. So things that are allowable one day might be changed the next. For example, prior to January 1st, our field trip volunteers did not need to be fully vaccinated. After January 1st, they did. That eliminates community partners who could really support our families and our communities in accessing learning in different modalities. And then just the fear and anxiety of COVID is very, very real. We have family members, we have staff, we have community members who've lost family, who've lost people close to them, or it's caused them to pause. And with community partners, they have to pause what they're doing because their activity really relies on in-person learning. So when that's taken away, you just feel disconnected because you can't physically be in the spaces that you once were. Another piece that really affects us is language. So if you notice when Gordine talked about that more than 50% of our families have a non-English home language, sometimes when we're sending out this information, and I'll lift up COVID again as a reason of sending out lots of communication and updates to families, sometimes information at first translation, there's no non-English version. And so they're getting an English version, so it becomes 100% inaccessible. So if we're asking families to show up somewhere or show up differently or do different, they're not understanding. It's not a simultaneous translation. And sometimes even when it does happen, the information or formatting doesn't match. They're not looking at the same thing. We have, as a great example today, translation present during meetings. At school sites, that can be a challenge. We might not have the site-based language capacity. Here at Frick United and within our district, Mom, which is an Indigenous tongue, is one of our growing languages. And translation is hard. We literally have homegrown one of our translators. She was one of our students and is now one of our translators, but it's very difficult to find. And often even with that language, there needs to be someone who has both a Mom language capacity and a Spanish language capacity. And then also we use Teacher Talk and we use Ed Talk. And so we're using acronyms, we're using highly technical terms all the time without explanation. And we don't use family-friendly just terms, and we just move past it as if everyone knows. And so as families are sitting there and we're using these ed terms, or we're using Teacher Talk, they're just not able to access it because they don't literally understand what we're saying. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide and invite my team member, Jerome, for timing.
So in terms of timing, which is another one of those factors about not scheduling meetings at times that work for the community. Sometimes meetings are scheduled at commuter dinner times, not giving opportunity for proper lead time ahead of the event. So really focusing more on making event announcements that do not give families enough time for attendance, enough time to plan for attendance. And then just the amount of information to be shared during events doesn't allow proper time to engage authentically. That seems to be a common issue that needs to be thought about differently and resolved. And that information heavy convenings often do not allow enough time for questions and discussion, which goes back to not having that opportunity to allow proper time to engage authentically.
So the why. Failure to name the why. In an attempt to shorten flyers and make them catchy or easily accessible, we often leave out why we're holding events or why we're asking parents to participate, and why their input is important. A few reasons why this is detrimental we have identified are, one is that as central office staff or site staff, we assume that parents would want to be present and involved because of the same reasons that we want to be involved, that their why stems from the same concern or thought process, and will offer the same sense of importance or urgency, when in reality, families have a lot on their plate and are dealing with a lot of things outside of school issues that take precedence. So explaining the why would give them more reason to make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to be involved and have input, instead of just asking them to show up. And then also many family members have been traumatized by the system and don't trust that their voice and time will be respected or that it'll make a change. And so conveying our why helps us hold ourselves accountable and allows our communities to hold us accountable, that we are working toward what we are saying that we want to do, and that we're continuing to move forward in those goals, and also show that we are listening and that what we're asking them to be involved in is in line with what they've told us in the past, that this is really a two-way communication and that we're hearing what they have to say. Next slide. Using trusted voices is really important. So we have been depending on like impersonal methods, such as like Parent Square, to get messages out instead of having teachers, after school program, like employees or community school managers spread important information. Messaging that does not come from a person on the school site that does come from sorry, I'm really nervous, bear with me.
You're doing fine.
Thank you. Information that does come from a person on the school site is normally in regard to discipline or attendance. If they talk to like the attendance specialist or somebody like that. And it's a person who doesn't have like a personal rapport with the families. And as a parent, I wanted to share, because I'm also a parent of an OUSD student, I'm more likely to do more, show up, or be more involved if the person who is talking to me or who is engaging with me is somebody that I know and that I trust and has taken the time to build a personal relationship with me, rather than some random person calling from the office that I see every once in a while. So using trusted voices will help to bring people in. So here are the selected strategies, 3 selected strategies that we want to try and implement moving forward. So leveraging familiar platforms is really important. We used a lot of Google Classroom and like Jupyter Ed last year to share grades and send messages with teachers and to share assignments. And parents, because of the pandemic, were kind of forced to learn how to use these platforms to keep their kids involved and engaged in school. And so if we continue to use those platforms that they've already learned, instead of adding new ones like Parent Square, which is new to our district this year, it'll keep parents more involved, because it'll take less capacity and less time for them to learn a new platform and how to navigate it, especially with families who, like we shared, are not English is not their first or their home language. Trying to navigate how to find and like translation on different apps is difficult, and don't always have the capacity to sit down for 30 minutes and try and figure out how to get to where they want to go on different platforms. We also want to focus on the personal. So this relates to messaging coming from trusted voices and focusing on building personal relationships and meeting families where they are by working with the goal of making personal connection with families. They will be more likely to participate when someone they trust is sharing information or inviting them to events. And then increasing visuals and decreasing acronyms speaks to like using less teacher talk on flyers and in messaging. So despite language barriers, literacy levels, or capacity of a family member to sit and read a lengthy flyer or newsletter, if we focus on communicating with visuals and pictures and less words, it will be more accessible to the majority of parents and families. Flyers and bulletin boards are more appealing and draw more people in when they're covered in colorful visuals and less words. And when we use words, make sure to spell out the full name of committees, tests, things like that. So no less acronyms, because acronyms are confusing and off-putting. And I would share like my personal experience as an employee. I'm somewhat new to my role, and I still find myself getting lost in meetings when people are using acronyms, and I hear them regularly. So for a family member who does not hear them regularly, it would sound like you're speaking a different language, and that can be really off-putting and intimidating. And as a parent, I think all of these tie back to the school valuing my time as a parent, or like our family's time as our family members' times. And a lot of our families have multiple children, are being pulled in a million different directions. And by not asking families to learn new platforms, and by making flyers and bulletin boards simplified, straight to the point, that saves me time and energy as a parent, I know, because I don't have to read like a long, lengthy thing and try and figure out what the important information is if we just give it to them straight away. And I'll be more likely to take time out of my schedule and join an event or a meeting when I'm invited by a person that I'm comfortable with and trust from the campus. So because sites have a lot on their plates right now, our timeline and the way that we're going to be tracking this, we're thinking anywhere between 12 and 18 months to have these new strategies implemented on campuses in OUSD. Due to the pandemic and other things that are going on politically in the district, it will take schools time to focus on these strategies and adopt them as new. So we're thinking 12 to 18 months is a realistic timeline.
So as we wrap up our presentation, just looking at how we engage stakeholders, the Office of Equity has a rigorous team that supports all of our networks here in Oakland. So definitely team debriefs, host large events and large convenings, site feedback. So that is informal feedback, that is formal feedback from both parents and staff and the community. And then just like our conversations with families and students in passing. And then when we look at the stakeholder involvement to make this happen, our district comms department, they send out so many of our central messages, like we have to be on board. Yes, we understand that some things are tech heavy or text heavy, and we're conveying like legal information, but we really have to push things that are more understandable by our community at large by focusing on visuals and having things sent at the right time. Office of Equity as a check and balance and really holding our equity-based work and making sure we're making things accessible to families has to happen. And then our community-facing staff to lead this work and to work as an example to train site staff and be as a model for site staff as we move towards doing this more effectively. And because we're community schools, everyone has to be on board. This is something that everyone has to change their communication style, from teachers to the custodian to everyone who's at the school site, and not just leaving it sitting with one person.
Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and first ask all of us to join and celebrate such an amazing presentation. Let me start by recognizing Jamie, Samantha, and Jerome. Thank you so much for guiding us through such great reflection that your team has done. These are very crucial times in family and community engagement. And so I know that a lot of what you said resonated with a lot of us.